Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave.
On behalf of every father and every mother.
Wings for freedom. On behalf of our
Warriors. And paves the way for a new history.
So we have an excellent guest today to talk a little bit about some open source research stuff. But last week, Mr. Germany to Ukraine and I mentioned that there was some kind of offensive going on in Kursk. We didn't really understand much about it because we're not GeoINT guys ourselves. But we have someone who has a bit more of a sophisticated, nuanced understanding of what's going on in Kursk here with us today. So I wanted to start with that real quick. Mr. Gesh, could you comment briefly before we start your presentation on the events we vaguely commented on last week in terms of like what happened in Kursk? That there were several like mainstream news stories, I guess you'd say, about like an offensive in Kursk. So if you could just elaborate on that a little bit, thanks.
Okay, hello. I first want to say that I base most of this, what I will explain now, on geolocated footage that was geolocated by mainly two guys, namely Geek and Imi. They have done an immense, great work on this for this counterattack, with basically documenting every day what exactly happened. But yeah, let's start. Okay, on the 5th of January, so basically exactly 1 week ago, we have heard we have seen signs of Ukrainian vehicles advancing in Kursk. And there was a lot of speculation how big this attack was it a Ukrainian offensive, etc., and what it would achieve. We can now say that this attack was likely only company-sized, or maybe a bit bigger than company-sized, so not exactly a very big attack. To give a scale there, basically 3 companies are roughly 1 battalion, and then for Ukrainian units, like 6 battalions are 1 brigade. So it's like really a very, very small attack in that sense. And this attack has initially taken 2 villages in this area, namely Berdin, and I can't find the name of the second one right now, but it's not that important. It's basically right next to Berdin. It's like a few kilometers in. Wait, I can share the screen as well if you want. I think I can maybe show it better that way. Okay, great. I hope the quality is good today. So yeah, there was this attack here. We have seen some destroyed Ukrainian vehicles. I think in total we have seen around 6 or 7 destroyed vehicles, or at most. And we have then seen evidence on the same day, basically, that they have entered Berdin. And the thing is, on the very same day, something else happened, namely on the western part of the front line, a way bigger Russian attack happened. So there's a lot of speculation behind if those 2 attacks were somehow linked. Did the Ukrainians know about the Russian attack and try to subvert some of their focus, so they couldn't fully focus on this? Or did the Russians know about the Ukrainian attack and this is why they attacked? We don't know this, but the dates of the 2 attacks certainly coincide, so there might be some connection there. And yes, what we have seen afterwards here is the Russians try to move back here, like they committed some forces here, and they're trying to throw the Ukrainian soldiers out. And we are not sure now if Ukraine still has control here, because on the 7th we have seen evidence of a Russian assault. But to be honest, I'm quite sure that the Ukrainians aren't there anymore now, because on the 7th we have seen evidence of a Russian attack. The Russians have also shown Ukrainian POWs from the 82nd Ukrainian Brigade. I think it's air assault. And Yes, and from the 8th on board, we have basically seen no geolocations anymore from this area at all. And on the 10th, the Russians even managed to advance into Rusko Porechne. So I think it's fair to say now that this attack eventually did not result in land gains for the Ukrainians. And I would even go as far as to say it was a mild failure. It was in no way, shape, or form a very big attack or anything. So attacks like these happen all the time. They succeed, they fail. Like this is war. But yeah, I think it's a big problem that a lot of the info space immediately jumped to completely overhyping this attack, while the only evidence we had are a handful of Ukrainian vehicles moving and nothing bigger. And I think it's very, very important to watch out, to look at the actual evidence, to look what's actually out there and not jumping to conclusions too quickly. But yeah, the two people who did most of the geolocating, there's Imi and Gig. I can highly recommend them if you are into geolocations, etc. If you want to see like where all the footage happens, etc. Yeah.
Also, the mad genius behind the lobby music, Mr. Gick, that we played earlier in the stream. So yeah, thanks so much for coming on and not just to explain that, but just by happenstance explaining that. I think it really added a lot of detail to what we said very vaguely last week. And as you said, I think it's good to have. I was a bit skeptical about the media reports about this, and so I think it's good that people know that this is something that maybe the media, I wouldn't say they exaggerated or lied, like it happened, but it's not particularly like you said, this happens a lot in Ukraine. There's nothing like particular. There's no good reason why this was called a big offensive and reported by the media for etc.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's
the real reason we had you on. Oh, go ahead.
No, there's something more on this. Sorry, one small more thing. We talked about this earlier before. In the last days, the Russians also managed to advance a bit in the Kursk region, and this is ever since 1 or 2 months has been the modus operandi there. They're using immense amount of equipment of men to advance. They are managing to advance. You could say it works in that way. But yes, I just wanted to add this detail.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, so I think, but the reason I called you on today, I'll cop to it, is that you made a post this I think yesterday or the day before about Chasiv Yar and what's going on in Chasiv Yar. You outlined the different Russian units that are involved and some other information, and so I wanted to kind of maybe talk to the audience about that. And I think what we settled on in terms of like what the presentation is about is obviously we'll kind of explain the contents of the information real quick. But I think Gesh has basically said, like, if you want to know like what the tweet thread or what the report said, you can just go to Twitter and check it out. Right. It's pretty easy to read it yourself. But what we thought would be maybe more useful is to help explain kind of the process behind how such research is done and how it can be considered reliable. So that's kind of the topic of, I think, his discussion is like how methods to collect open source information on Russian military units. And Chasiv Yar is kind of the example. So, Mr. Gesh, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks a lot. And yeah, basically, this is what I do with, like, most of my research is basically doing stuff like this, trying to find out where Russian units are, where they have moved. And recently I've seen a post from a Russian channel that prompted me to go into Chasiv Yar, because this channel, wait, I can show you the post in a second. I mean, it pains me a lot to show a post from these guys, because I don't think there are many worse people out there than Russich. This is a channel from Russich. They're like basically the worst human beings imaginable, but they have given some very interesting information on what's happening in Chasiv Yar itself. And with this information, I then tried to verify it and to see if I could, like, with other means, see if this is the truth, what they write. Because, yeah. So basically, they have said that in the north, in the very north, the 200th Brigade is attacking, and on the area of the workshop. This is the refractory plant, and one of these buildings is the workshop. And together with the 331st Regiment, that the 217 Airborne Regiment is trying to reach this intersection. And the 299th, they didn't mention. And yeah, basically they only mentioned those three units. So this was for me very valuable information because what I do, I go through a lot of Russian MIA reports. So if a Russian soldier is missing, the relatives write, hey, he's missing, and he's missing. Often they write, he's missing in Chasiv Yar. So I knew that those units were in Chasiv Yar. Like, I've seen plenty of MIA posts from all these units, but I didn't know exactly where they were. And with this information, I then tried to identify the exact positions, or roughly the exact positions. Obviously, this is still some guesswork. I sadly also missed one unit, but I will get to this later. But I tried to get the exact positions. So we start with the 200 Motor Rifle Brigade. For this brigade, some additional info. A small part of this brigade is also in Kursk, with basically a tactical group together with the 80th Russian Brigade, so it's not fully committed here. And some months ago, I had an MIA report that one of their soldiers went missing in exactly this village. So I knew already that the area of operation was more in the north of Chasiv Yar. So this was one data point that kind of confirmed that they are pushing into the north. Then some more points. They are one of the main drone units in this area, at least judging from the footage that we have, because we are getting a ton of footage from them. And I also know from the geolocations of this footage that they're also striking a lot of targets more north of Chasiv Yar and generally in this district and in this area. So this all added up very well, and I felt comfortable enough with this information to place this unit here. Exactly, Kalinivka. Thank you. And then I went further with the 331st Airborne Regiment. I also only had the information that they were fighting in Chasiv Yar. And the thing is, with the 200 Motor Rifle Brigade, as I said earlier, they're not 100% of the manpower is here. So it makes sense that the area of operation isn't too big, especially since they're also stretched a bit north here. Like, it's likely to assume that some of the units are also up here. So it would make sense that then the 331st Airborne Regiment is next to them. Then for the 217th Airborne Regiment, I actually had some very good data points that was posted by Blinska. He did the geolocation on this. And like on the 24th of December, the channel of the 98th Airborne Division, which is the superior unit of the 217 Regiment, posted a strike on Ukrainian positions here, which is exactly the direction that Russich was talking about they're fighting in. I also know from the MIA reports they have been fighting in Chasiv Yar since months. They haven't really gone off the line much, as far as I can tell, because I've seen a constant stream of MIA reports, which are like have basically the same amount every month, which means the how should I word it? The strength of commitment isn't really that different from month to month, which lets me assume that they are like fighting constantly. So yeah, this again. I know they're in Chasiv Yar. They are striking positions in the area, and then I have an additional report that they are trying to push towards here. It adds up again. For the 200, wait, I'll open this again. 299th. For this, I'm not fully sure if they're done here or up here, to be honest. I can't tell for sure. But I had an MIA report from some time ago, for like I think 2 months, that mentioned that they were still fighting for the channel. The thing is, at that time, the channel in the north was already crossed. So it would have been reasonable to assume that they are still fighting a bit to the south of this. Like here we have it, the post. On the 2nd of October. Yeah, they are fighting in the channel area in Seversky Pike. So, and also the lack of mention of them fighting inside Chasiv Yar from the social media post again reinforces this assumption. So, yeah, exactly. And then for the 4th Motor Rifle Brigade, it was a very easy thing. We are seeing a ton of footage from them. They are posting regularly, and basically all their strikes are between Ivanivske and Chasiv Yar. Like they are constantly striking exactly in this area. And yeah, it was not really, really hard to decipher that they were the next unit, because the next unit to the south already that I know from this area is already towards, I can show it here as well. Yeah, here in Bakhmut, Chasiv Yar. Because the next unit to the south is already Klishivka. This is like area of the 6th Motor Rifle Division. They're fighting all around here. So I knew already they are the next unit near Chasiv Yar. They're south of Chasiv Yar, and they're around the Ivanivske area. I also knew there had to be a unit here, because we have seen footage of Ukrainian strikes there. We have seen footage of Russian strikes there. So there has to be someone fighting here. And if the air, and I assumed that the area of operation for each unit was roughly the same size, especially for the regiments. And yeah, that's why I think this unit exactly is around here. And something else, I don't know why exactly, but I am very sure that this regiment hasn't been really fully committed, especially between mid-October and mid-December. And again, the way to find stuff like this out is I looked at a huge number of MIA reports. I've looked at the MIA reports from before mid-October. There was like several per month, like 20 or something. And then I looked at the MIA reports since mid-December. I've also seen several since then. Obviously, there's some information delay for this, because a lot of relatives only post after a few weeks after the soldier has gone missing. But I've seen like 3 or 4 or 5 MIA reports since mid-December, which lets me assume that the unit is committed and fighting. But for this time period, I've seen, I think, at most one report, and another report that a soldier has been transferred to the 331st Airborne Regiment during the time, which then let me assume that this unit has maybe been moved backwards for rest and recuperation. Yep. And maybe this is also the reason why the Russians haven't really been that successful in the southern Chasiv Yar area, because the unit responsible for it hasn't really been committed to it and not really fighting that heavily. For whatever reason, maybe they have taken so many losses before that they couldn't allow themselves to commit that much more. They didn't have the necessary manpower to commit much more. And an additional data point for this, I don't have it for this very unit, but it's also often very interesting. The Russian ministry or the Russian oblasts are often posting posts for recruiting. And most of the recruiting posts are also for specific units. And a lot of the time, those specific units that are mentioned there are currently not on the front line, because they're in the rear trying to refill their ranks, trying to get soldiers back, and that's why they're putting out recruitment posts. And this is also, I mean, if you put this together with more information, you can then also assume, hey, this unit is currently off the line or not. Yeah, this is basically how I approach this topic. And one thing I sadly missed is generally in the Bakhmut area, there are a huge amount of the Russian PMCs, all the volunteer units, like the whole volunteer unit stuff is something I want to research more because it's very interesting. A lot of it is connected with the Spetsnaz and their recruitment, and they then fill the recruits they get into those volunteer units, and most of those units are fighting, especially in this area as well, up here in the north, and they're not that effective as far as I can see. But one of them, the 88th Brigade Española, which is not really brigades, most likely, by the way. A lot of just because it's called a brigade, it's not always a brigade, especially for those volunteer units.
Isn't Española also a particularly horrible unit?
Likely, I haven't really looked into them that much.
It's basically a neo-Nazi, another one.
Another one of them, like Kursk.
Yeah, they are horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, can very well be. I mean, why else would you fight for the Russian? Okay. So yeah. They are also fighting in Chasiv Yar, and sadly, I mean, I had some data points for it, but most of them were some months old. My problem here was that I sadly didn't really look much further into them. Otherwise, I would have realized that they're still in Chasiv Yar. So I sadly missed them in my assessment, and this was one mistake of mine while doing that. And yeah, problem when you do this in a couple of hours instead of a couple of days. So yeah, I wanted to add this as well because you also always have to watch out for your mistakes, for your own mistakes, for the stuff you miss. Not always only the stuff you see. You also have to consider the stuff you miss. So yeah, this was basically how I approached this research, how other people could approach similar stuff. And if anyone wants more detailed information on how exactly I do some stuff or anything about units, etc., you can always hit me up in Blue Sky or Twitter, whatever. Send me a message there. I'm always happy to talk about it, etc. Yeah.
I have a specific question about Chasiv Yar when you're on the topic. The area around the canal that where you mentioned just recently, the Novi. There's not really much presence there the last few weeks, really, as far as I understood. Do you think that anyone really has any control in that area, and also in the parts that are marked as red? As far as I understood, there hasn't been just north of Novi, Shovetny. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Both those areas, is it populated at all, or is it more?
Oh yeah. I mean, this is exactly where it. Which one was it? Sorry, I'm very bad with numbers. Something 217 years. They are fighting there. As I said before, we have seen a strike exactly here on a Ukrainian position, like 1 month ago, and they are trying to push into there. We know they are there. The thing is with this, the 299th has just come back from the rest and recuperation. They are trying to. I think they are trying to fight there, but it's insanely hard to cross such a natural or such an obstacle as this channel. This is a very, very serious obstacle to cross. And this was also what held the Russians back for such a long time there, because any piece of water is insanely hard to cross because you can't really get your vehicles across. Even your soldiers getting across it in this cold is very hard. And yeah, we have some...
So what I meant is it really a high presence area, or is it more or less?
I think most of the focus is within Chasiv Yar itself here. And especially the refractory plant is the main axis of attack right now.
Because I guess what we can assume is that Ukraine's tactic is to kind of strike the Russians as they try to cross because of this natural obstacle, which is helping them still, even if they don't really hold the canal anymore. They still have certain fire control over it, and that makes
Yeah.
any reinforcements really, really difficult. This map doesn't necessarily give it.
Yeah, we
lot
don't
of
know
insight.
exactly who is here. Like this is just the gray zone. Nobody really controls this exactly here, I think, because the Ukrainians can freely strike it. Like you can't really set up much positions here, I think.
Yeah.
It's very susceptible to attack from both sides, basically.
It's interesting to see like the Ukrainians actually keeping some foothold here a lot longer than what I would have expected, but I guess the canal still being some sort of a natural obstacle is mainly the reason.
Yeah. I also think it helped the Ukrainians a lot. Sorry, there was another question.
Yeah, so I guess I have like two questions. The first is I wanted to, because we're trying to give people a little bit of like a how-to here, is like occupational hazards. So, I mean, I assume you're going on Telegram, and that's where you're finding most of this information. Is that accurate?
Telegram, VK, all the Russian social media that's out there. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's like one is do you go to those sites at your own risk, people out there who would be interested in doing this, and take precautions. I don't know, like we could probably
VK is the interest for you. Don't like VK is actually, if you go on VK, you need to don't go there with VPN, or it's a government, it's a Russian controlled website at all. Like it's dangerous to be on there generally. So yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, that's all. I just wanted to make sure people understood. Like it's, you're not gonna. The Russians aren't gonna reach out of the computer and get you, but you should take precautions and prophylactic measures, as it's called, to protect yourself from weird social media stuff. And then I would say the other occupational hazard is you're gonna see some stuff that you can't unsee if you get involved in this line of work. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yes, I have some very strict rules for myself because I know this is very much a risk. For example, I try to watch as little combat footage as possible, actually, because I know that this is something this is bad for your mental health, very much. And yeah, I mean, mostly when I do this work, I try to scan the posts, etc., for the information and not really read what's actually written there. I deal a lot with human misery, and being exposed to human misery all the time is also not that healthy for you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So I just maybe wanted to make people aware of those. I think that those are the two main. I think it would be a bit of an exaggeration to call them hazards, but those are the things you should be careful with when you're doing this line of work. Would you agree?
Yeah, very much. You should be cautious about this. You're right. I should have maybe mentioned it. Yeah.
And then I guess my other question was just about like your actual process. So I think you laid out in kind of broad terms what you're doing, but if we get a little bit more granular, like in terms of how you actually organize the information, do you have like a spreadsheet that you put all this on? Do you have like a Charlie wall of like all the conspiracies of, from It's Always Sunny, where he's pointing at the wall with all the yarn, connecting things? Or how do you actually organize the information in such a way that it's like all comprehensible to you?
I am a spreadsheet guy for sure. I have like a ton of different spreadsheets where I track all kind of stuff, and I try to make them interoperable as well. So connecting the units to some of the other stuff, and then the one spreadsheet gets it from the others. Yeah, stuff like that. But I don't really. I definitely won't go into the details there, but yeah, I do it all in spreadsheets, try to collect all the information that's interesting. Yeah.
I got you. I mean, it makes sense. I think a lot of the people in your line of work are spreadsheet guys. I would agree. Like nothing quite beats mastering a spreadsheet when it comes to handling data. Have you seen anyone else do it differently, or you think like spreadsheets is the main way people go about doing stuff like this?
I've recently met the guy. He's doing it by memory, and this is actually baffling me. I have no idea how he does it. Like, he's also extremely knowledgeable on Russian positions and Russian orbit, and when I asked him where he saves it, he just said he remembers it, and this is I don't know how he does it.
Okay, so yeah, that aside from one inexplicable superhuman anomaly, it seems like most people do spreadsheets.
Yeah, I've basically only seen spreadsheets. I mean,
Yeah, it makes sense.
that's how most people do it.
Cool. Does anyone else on the panel have any questions about? I think we're kind of asking generally about like OSINT stuff, like how they make the maps and all that. I guess one thing I would say is like the maps are a little bit of like a byproduct, right? Like these guys are mostly working in spreadsheets, and then they kind of take the spreadsheets and they get put on a map. Like they're not sitting there all day going like, I'm going to put a pin here. I mean, is that accurate, Erlend?
Yeah, I mean, it's the map is the goal, the end product, and there are there's different products like the movement on the front line, the geolocations of events, not just military events, but also civil events like responding to emergencies that are connected to some sort of Russian attack or all kind of different events actually is mapped, right? So it's not just movements on the front line. There are a lot of byproducts of this, Andrew's first goal to make a map, which is as precise as possible. So yeah, spreadsheets and lots of different applications that have been developed by our AI girl is being used in order to sort data and find what is usable for the map. And there's a hell of a lot more data than just the stuff that is being published on the map, but some things are not either useful to publish because you can't geolocate it, or it's just clutter, or there are different reasons, but there's enormous amounts of data, and some just isn't interesting, like videos that aren't really showing anything or being duplicates of old stuff, things like that. So there's a lot of lines in this sheet that are never gonna be anywhere, but the map is the end product.
Right. And so I think Mr. Gesh has been very generous with his time. Real quick, does the panel have any other questions or things they wanted to add about this?
Oh, there was a question in the chat.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Like, how do you manage the time? So we'll let you, because I know you have some stuff you got to go do. You can't stick around for Q&A. So we'll let you wrap up with that question. Just how much time does it take? How do you manage your time? That kind of thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I will actually go monitoring units after this as well. How much time it takes? But just monitoring unit stuff, like let's say like 6 hours a day for just the basic stuff. That it depends if I also want to do some deep dives in specific areas, but just the general maintenance stuff for my research where I want to keep everything up to date. I think it's like 5 or 6 hours. It's a lot of time.
Woof. Yeah, I think in generally speaking, I would say, Erlend, I remember when were looking for guys for the basement. I mean, it's like, I would say a couple of days a week, a couple of hours is like the bare minimum. They would really want more than that, because it's sort of like you're given a pile of data, and it's better to give one person that pile and just say, go through this, because one person is just able to do it kind of more efficiently. But would you say, Erlend, that's like the floor, the bare minimum is like a few hours, a few days a week?
Yeah, and also right now we've kind of realized that integrating new people is also time consuming, and it's time consuming for the people that have the best ability to actually process the data. So I'm not sure how the new recruitment strategy is going to be, but we definitely need to kind of adjust it, because we had enormous backlog that just piled up in the last couple of weeks for various reasons. One being that Ukraine says it's a calm, day. We don't really we have a media stop, but then they publish 260 videos, and it's just like absolutely insane. So,
yeah, I think a big part of the issue, right, is that this content, the amount of videos and information coming out keeps scaling up. There's keeps being more and more of it, exponentially more of it. But, that's going to happen no matter what. It's up to us humans doing this for free to, I'm not doing it, those guys to, do the hard work and like actually figure out how to scale it. And it's very difficult to scale this along with the amount of stuff that keeps coming in. So, it's tough work. Mr. Gesh, we really appreciate you coming on and explaining how all this stuff is done. Is there anything else you want to maybe parting words for the audience in terms of this type of work, why you do it? Like, do you think other people should get into it? Because I think there's there's a lot of information that doesn't get covered because no one's doing it. Would you agree?
Yes, certainly. There's so much information out there, so much a few months ago, I didn't know anything about any of this. Basically, I didn't really know how big a regiment, what a regiment even was really. And another thing that I want to, there's so much information out there, so much freely available that's just sitting there. Nobody is really collecting and connecting it, because the connection is also like mostly the interesting part, like connecting all the dots, putting it all together, and then realizing something. And I mean, the reason why I'm doing it, this is I want to try to present the most accurate information possible. I want to educate people or show people what's happening exactly, what's going on. If a person wants to see what's going on, he should be able to access it easily. But another thing, if you get into this line of work, I have to say, there are no weekends. There are no holidays. I had my first real holiday over Christmas, and let's say it like this: the days before and the days after, they were very interesting. I basically woke up, set up my PC, and then went to bed again. Because I tried to I took a holiday. I knew I knew what would happen with it, how much backlog and everything I would have, but this is, I mean, you don't have to go into this that deep. Obviously, there are a lot of people who are doing it beside, doing a lot of other things as well. But yep, it's sometimes very, very time-consuming work. But it's also, for me at least, very fulfilling work, because I'm actually creating something. I'm actually contributing something, and not just, That's what I wanted to say.
So one thing I would like to say is that if you're interested in doing this kind of work, then do it like Gesh and Artem and Soam, for instance, that came in this last year to the scene and kind of chose their niche, because then you can dive into something that you can follow in time, and not necessarily just breaking down videos from wherever where it comes from, and without necessarily any specific goal for yourself. If this is something you really want to contribute to, then starting to learn about a specific topic that you think is either interesting or very important, and exploring that sphere, and maybe find a way to follow one specific subject like these three people have done. That definitely contributes more to the GeosINT community, and also I think it's more giving.
Yeah, for sure.
It does, come with the caveats that you don't have any free time. That's another topic.
Like, you don't have to do it like that. You don't, they're obviously always, I chose it. I chose to invest that much time into it. It's my, it's a trial for myself. I wanted to try it, and yeah, this is not something I'm forced to do, but I want to do.
Of course, it's an accomplishment as well. Like when you can see the results of the research, and then that's giving, and it makes people motivated. And I see that the people that did this kind of choice, dive into one specific topic, it seems to be thriving a lot more in whatever they do. So, yeah, if you're interested, contact one of the people in the team or us directly. But I do want to say that we really look for people that are interested in either diving into one specific topic or have some knowledge already, because right now it's almost impossible for the team to integrate new people.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like before it was basically just Andrew and Gick doing it. And it was like, if you added one person, you added so much extra like labor to the pool. But with now that there's like a decent number of people, it's not a huge number, but it's bigger than two, like adding one new person slows everything down a little bit, and it doesn't have the same like percentage of benefit, right, overall. So I think that's the bottleneck we're running into now. But I think, like as Erlend was saying, if you're really dedicated, I think there's definitely room for new people. It's just a question of like, this is kind of a new ground, having a way to organize it all into one cohesive organization where it's no one's doing redundant work and everything's kind of efficient, so that the sheer volume of data can be processed. But yeah, I think we probably got to let Gesh go. But any last words, Gesh?
But I think I've said most of the things, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so too. Next week. Slava Ukraini.
Heroim Slava.
Heroям слава.
On behalf of the brave.